think I've always worked with performers, because even in private practice, years ago, there were always lots of dancers. Every area has dance schools, music schools, loads and loads of sporting areas. And of course, they came in. And I think I always remember thinking about the lives that these people led. So things like the footballers coming in, they would be kids from the age of probably 8 or 9. I'd see them right through till teens, when they probably gave up. Many of these sports kids and musicians and dancers give up in their teens because they've become the wrong shape, or they fall out of love with it, or they haven't passed an exam to the right level, or for whatever reasons that these kids gave up. But I do remember thinking that the sports kids were really quite healthy. I mean, they might have come into me with some sort of injury, rolled their ankle, twisted their knee, and it definitely was an injury. It was something you could actually diagnose. Yes, you've actually sprained your ankle, or you've pulled a ligament, or you've torn a muscle. There were definite injuries there, but the kids were basically fairly fit in other ways. I remember the dancers coming in with similar things, really. These kids were a little bit stressed, sometimes a bit thin, but basically they were pretty healthy. The reason for this was because they weren't actually dancing every day for 2 hours. They were doing maybe sports at school. They were doing possibly a football match on a Wednesday afternoon, and they might have a football match on a Sunday morning. We know all about the fathers on Sunday morning. So they were often, these kids were in good nick. The musicians, I remember thinking, these kids they are 11, 12, 13 years old. They're doing schoolwork. They might be doing practice before they go to school. They're doing individual practice when they come home from school. And they were telling me that probably 2 hours a day they were doing. In those days, we're talking about a long time ago, actually made an impression on me, because I'm thinking these kids are not healthy. To spend all that time on their own, they're probably not doing sport because they've joined the orchestra or they've joined the choir. And they are very much upper body activity only. There is nothing going on below the waist. There's a lot of sitting, there's a lot of static work. And then the work they're doing with their upper body is absolutely massive. Unusual, intricate, difficult work with fingers and wrists, which actually they were never born to do, to be quite honest. You know, we're hunter-gatherers. We weren't meant to be doing this amazing amount of work with our hands and not the rest of our bodies. So I think that the pressure on the body produces not necessarily injuries, but an overuse problem where the whole body is literally tired. That the sports people are very careful with their bodies generally. The kids are not quite so careful, but as they get older and they want to achieve, they've got to be fit and they've got to be healthy. You cannot do that sort of exercise, which is majorly lower limb. I mean, obviously sports people are using the whole bodies, and you can think about tennis players. They're using legs. They've got to use their legs. If their feet aren't in the right place, they can't hit the ball. So they're very strong in their whole body. And they want to win. I mean, they actually they want to be part of the team. And to be part of a team and to do well, you've got to be fit. So very early on, these kids are taught to warm up before they play. You're never going to find a football team or a cricket team or a tennis player who doesn't warm up before they start to play. So and orchestras don't warm up. There's no sort of coming out and getting body moving. I mean, I think the conductors should be doing this, but or maybe the first violin, come out, warm the orchestra up. What a lovely thing to see. They creep on, they sit down, they warm up on their instruments, but that's not warming up the body. So, and that's been proven now that one of my students at the Royal College actually and I put together research paper 3 years ago now to find out whether the warm-up really worked. Well, I knew it really worked because dancers do it, sportsmen do it, but musicians don't do it. So that needs to start early on. Yeah, musicians, kids, they need to be warming up from the age of 7 or 8 when they found that they're quite good and they think that they might like to do music as a good hobby. By the time they get to 13, they're thinking profession. By the time they're 15, they're working towards their auditions. Yeah, they're elite athletic musicians. They're not just musicians, and they need to treat their bodies like that. But the teachers don't warm them up. The teachers don't really know always how the body works, and that doesn't help either. So just knowing that the nerve roots come from the neck, and therefore if you move the neck and you move the shoulders, then the nerves which run through the arms, in between muscles and through the joints, they need to be warmed up as well. It's not just the muscles, it's the whole of the system needs to be warmed, including the head, because as soon as you start the warm-up, the brain then sends messages to the heart and the lungs and the liver. All are important to actually get this body ready for what is happening ahead. I created a warm-up many years ago, actually, which I haven't really changed in all those years, and a warm-up basically taking in every joint of the body, because every joint from the atlas right at the top of the neck all the way down to the coccyx, those joints for musicians need to be moved, because that's the bit they're going to be working on. But I certainly include the legs, because by working the legs, you get the heart going. Actually, it takes an awful long time to swing your arms to get your heart rate up. I mean, you can, but actually if you're doing marching on the spot, or standing up and down from a chair, or using the bottom step of a staircase to actually get that heart going, that's what you want. You want to really increase the heart rate, so that it pushes the blood around the body, takes the warmth around the body, and then once the warmth comes in, then the soft tissues become more malleable. And I reckon the body is a little bit like plasticine. And if you ever play with plasticine in its cellophane, you take it out of the cellophane and it's hard. So if you bent it, it would break. But if you molded it and you warmed it and you strengthened, you could do what you like with it. And that's how our bodies are. They need to be in a really good state of warmth, with the heart working well and the liver sorting out the glucose. And that's what we need before we actually start our practice or orchestral session or whatever it may be. So for guitarists, yeah, absolutely, they are the most fetal in position. And I'm actually, this is where I get a little bit I'm unusual in my thoughts about the guitarist, because when I first saw a guitar player hunched on a low seat with a foot on the stool, cuddling the guitar in the most dreadful postural position ever. You can't even breathe like that, because you're literally crushing the lungs. You've only got really the apical lobes still free to breathe. And I just thought, wonder whether we can change this. This doesn't look particularly comfortable. And unless you're hugely mobile, very flexible in the back, it's actually very uncomfortable. I tried it. I'm flexible. I'm thinking, how can you sit there for maybe a guitar concerto, 35 minutes long? How can you sit there for that length of time and not want to breathe? I'd be out of breath. Anyway, so I have worked with all sorts of guitarists, with a classical guitarist, jazz guitarist, bass guitarist. And we work together depending on the shape of the body, because that's another issue. You know, you could have a 6'6" classical guitarist, or you could have a 4'10" classical guitarist. Depending on their body shape and the length of the leg and the flexibility, then let's get them up. So raise the chair straight away. You know, let's get you into a much more comfortable-ish position. So with my guitarist, I bring them up, and then of course they feel lacking in confidence about the guitar moving, shifting. One of the reasons they sit low is because they've got it. It's sitting on their lap, and they're in control of it, and it's not going to go anywhere. And if you raise them up, suddenly the guitar becomes very slippy and it moves. So we then got around that by finding like a guitar saddle, and it sits on the thigh. And then the guitar sits in that, and a little bit of non-slip matting on the thigh. That's not going to go anywhere. But most of my guitarists, certainly the ones who are standing, so we're talking about the jazz guitarists who are standing up, I get them to hold the fingerboard much higher, bring up the guitar so that they can sit and stand it in the same position, so we don't actually shift it down if they're sitting and up if they're standing, or vice versa. So it's actually in the same position, so they can stand up and play, sit down and play. High stool is really great for them, because they can just perch on the edge, and that's a wonderfully comfortable position to be in. And for the classical guitarists, we bring them up with the I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a saddle that the guitar sits in, and we play about with that as well. And we play about with the fingerboard end, bringing it up, being more comfortable. There are wonderful arm sleeves, padded arm sleeves for guitarists, which prevent pressure on the underarm if they're leaning on their guitar. So I think they're a great idea. Try to maintain the the right hand of the bass guitar, sometimes they actually bend the wrist and they're playing like this, and it's so difficult for those flexor tendons to work around the corner. So try really hard to get that elbow up and feel a bit more mobile in the shoulder and the elbow to become more fluid and not stuck springing away on the fingers. So that's something else we think about. Tend to take the guitar more into the flamenco style, not completely, because flamenco players, they're really upright, they're right up here. Not always easy with a heavy bass guitar to play like that, and probably wouldn't work. So we sort of like find the place, the position for each of the players, whatever size arms, legs, whatever's going on in their body, and get them to be comfortable. It's like finding your own position for your body and for your instrument, whichever guitar genre you're in.